The first thing Daniel saw wasn't the child's face, it was his own past staring back at him. It hit him like a sudden drop in the floor beneath his feet, like the world had tilted and forgotten to steady itself again. The boy stood there, small hand wrapped around a woman's fingers, blinking under the soft glow of a late afternoon sun, and for a moment Daniel couldn't breathe. Because those eyes were his. Before we dive into this story, take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you believe in kindness and second chances, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Stories like this remind us that sometimes the truth doesn't disappear, it just waits. 5 years earlier, Daniel had been a man who trusted numbers more than people. As a rising executive in a prestigious firm, his life was measured in profits, schedules, and calculated risks. Emotions were distractions, and love, well, love was something he believed he could control like everything else. That was until Isabella walked into his life like a quiet storm, gentle but impossible to ignore. She wasn't loud or dramatic, but there was something in the way she listened, the way she cared, the way she saw through him without even trying. And for the first time, Daniel felt something he couldn't quantify. Their relationship wasn't perfect, but it was real. Late nights talking about dreams, quiet mornings filled with unspoken comfort, laughter that came easily, it felt like something that could last. But Daniel had always carried a hidden flaw, fear disguised as control. He needed certainty, needed proof, needed everything to make sense in a world where emotions rarely did. So when doubt entered, it didn't knock politely. It crashed through the door. It started with whispers, careless comments from colleagues, a message seen out of context, a moment that didn't align with his expectations. And instead of asking, instead of trusting, Daniel chose suspicion. He built a narrative in his mind, one where betrayal made more sense than vulnerability. And when Isabella stood in front of him, her eyes filled with hurt and disbelief, saying the words that would echo in his mind for years, Nunca te engañé, he didn't listen. He saw her lips move, heard the tremble in her voice, but his pride was louder. He walked away. No dramatic goodbye, no attempt to understand, just a cold decision made by a man who thought he was protecting himself from pain. In reality, he was choosing a different kind of pain, one that would linger, silent and patient, waiting for the day he would finally understand what he had lost. Time moved on, as it always does. Daniel climbed higher in his career, gained recognition, wealth, and everything he once believed defined success. His life looked perfect from the outside, polished and impressive, but inside there was a quiet emptiness he refused to acknowledge. He told himself it was normal, that sacrifices were necessary, that love was overrated. But sometimes, in the quiet moments between meetings or late at night when the city lights flickered outside his window, he would think of her. Not in a dramatic, overwhelming way, but like a memory that refused to fade completely. A voice, a smile, a feeling, I'm finished. He never reached out. And then, 5 years later, everything changed in a single moment. It was an ordinary day, the kind that blends into countless others. Daniel had stepped out of a cafe, distracted by a call, when he noticed them. A woman and a child standing near the corner, waiting to cross the street. Something about the scene made him pause, like a subconscious pull he couldn't explain. Then he saw her face. Isabella. Time didn't just slow down, it stopped. She looked different, of course. More mature, her expression carrying a quiet strength that hadn't been there before. But it was her. There was no doubt. And beside her, the child. At first, Daniel couldn't understand why his chest tightened the way it did. Children didn't unusual, and yet something about this boy made his heartbeat stumble. Maybe it was the way he stood, the way he tilted his head, the familiar curve of his features, and then it hit him. Those eyes. They weren't just similar. They were his. A wave of realization crashed over him so violently that he had to steady himself. His mind raced, trying to piece together what he was seeing, trying to deny it, to find another explanation, but there wasn't one. The truth was standing right in front of him, undeniable and unforgiving. 5 years ago, she had told him the truth. And he hadn't believed her. Daniel felt something break inside him, something that had been held together by pride and denial for far too long. All the certainty he once relied on collapsed in an instant, replaced by a crushing weight of regret. He had walked away from her, from them, without even giving her a chance. Without giving himself a chance. He wanted to move, to call out her name, to do something, anything, but his body felt frozen. What could he say? What could he possibly say after 5 years of silence, after choosing doubt over trust? But left to wait for perfect words. As Isabella turned slightly, her eyes met his. For a moment, there was no reaction. Used recognition. And then, slowly, a mixture of emotion surfaced, shock, pain, something deeper that couldn't be easily defined. The boy looked up at her, then at Daniel, sensing the shift in the air without understanding it. Daniel took a step forward. It felt like the hardest step of his life. Every regret, every missed moment, every version of the life he could have had pressed down on him as he closed the distance between them. It didn't feel like the confident man he once was. It felt small. Uncertain. Human in a way he had spent years trying to avoid. He saw the boy more clearly now. The resemblance was undeniable, not just in appearance but in something intangible, a presence, a spark. And Daniel realized he had missed everything. First words, first steps, laughter, tears, 5 years of a life that was his, yet completely unknown to him. And all because he hadn't believed her. The silence between them was heavy, filled with everything that had been left unsaid. Daniel wanted to apologize, to explain, to undo the past, but some things can't be undone. They can only be faced. He looked at Isabella, really looked at her, and saw not just the woman he once loved, but the strength it must have taken to raise a child alone, to move forward without him, to carry a truth that had been dismissed. For the first time in years, Daniel didn't try to control the situation. He just felt it. Regret, guilt, longing, and a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to start again in some small way. If this story is touching your heart so far, take a moment to like, share, and leave a comment. It truly helps more stories like this reach others who need them. Because sometimes, stories aren't just stories. Sometimes, they're reminders. Reminders that trust matters, that pride can cost us more than we realize, and that the truth don't disappear just because we choose not to believe it. And as Daniel stood there, looking at the child who carried his reflection, he understood something he had spent 5 years avoiding. Love isn't about certainty. It's about trust. And he had failed. But maybe, just maybe, this moment was his chance to begin again.